Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another episode of the Muslim Education Show. Today we are very, very fortunate to have Rabbi Weiss from Neturei Karta with us, and we'll be speaking very briefly about the current situation on Palestine. Without further ado, Rabbi Weiss.
Assalamu alaikum. It's an
Welcome.
honor and a privilege. I'm humbled to be on your channel, which broadcasts to so many people around the world. And we hope, as I pray to the Almighty, that He should bestow upon me His truth, His wisdom, that I may be worthy of conveying His message and so sanctify His name and bring peace to the world, inshallah. So it's really a privilege to be here. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you so much for coming, Rabbi. I think I would like for you to maybe give us and our viewers that don't know about Neturei Karta, who are you and what do you stand for?
Well, with the help of the Almighty, I am not a person that is espousing, explaining, talking about my opinion, my feelings. We're talking about Judaism, to explain that around the world, Judaism is one thing and one thing only. It is a religion of 3,000 years that when Moses went up on Mount Sinai and took the Torah from the Almighty gave the Torah. It was purely from God, and gave to the Jewish people. We made a covenant to uphold the laws of the Torah, the many commandments, 613 commandments of the Torah, and so we should be subservient to Him. It's given by God, so therefore it's not capable of a human being to change, to edit, in the words of the Torah. It's purely from God, and therefore we are bound by the laws of the Torah 3,000 years later, and we haven't changed one iota, one letter of the Torah. We keep strictly adhering to the laws of the Torah. The Zionism, which we'll be speaking about, inshallah, that is a transformation. It's a movement that started around 150 years ago, and it is basically a whole transformation from this subservience to God into a base nationalism, which they're clothing themselves in the name Judaism. So basically it is contradictory, it is antithetical to Judaism. It's just the opposite of what Judaism is. It's a pure nationalism. And they proudly announce, as everybody hears from them constantly, that they're a democracy, which is of course also totally false. They don't have a democracy, only for the people that they want to give democracy to. But basically, they clearly are announcing that they are not a religion that's subservient to God, that has to uphold the laws of the Torah, as anybody can go and see how the cars traveling freely around on the Sabbath, on the seventh day, when one of the 10 commandments is that Jews should observe the Sabbath. That means we respect that God created the world 6 days, the seventh day He rested. And in order to show our belief in God and that He created the world, the Jews are commanded in the 10 commandments to rest on the day of Sabbath, not desecrate the Sabbath by doing work, by using many different things. And therefore, they're blatantly transgressing the laws of the Sabbath. One of the 10 commandments is something which clearly shows exactly what they are: a total disobedience to God, a rebellion against God, and not Judaism. Yet they cloak themselves in the name Judaism. They use the Star of David. They use the name Israel, which is Jacob in the Torah. And this is simply a ploy, a way of gaining legitimacy. We shouldn't leave out the fact that our 3,000-year-old religion warned us when God told us to go up to the Holy Land, God freed us from the servitude as slaves in Egypt, and God took us out through miraculous happening. We were told to go up to the Holy Land, but we were warned by God that we have to be on a very high level of spirituality. It is a holy land, and God wanted that we should serve Him there. But we were warned, and throughout the words that replete, both in the Torah and then afterwards by the prophets, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, all the prophets, that we were warned that if we're not on that level of holiness, that the land will reject us, just like a body rejects a foreign object because of its sensitivity. And the Jews were eventually driven from the land. not because of our physical lacking of prowess of power. It was because we say in our prayers, every Jew who's an observant Jew, we say in our prayers, because of our sins, we were driven from the land. God is the ruler of the world, controls the whole world, and we were sent out of the land, banished from the land as a nation. Individuals, we are allowed to live there. The ruling countries allow us, we can live there. But as a nation, we were driven from the land 2,000 years ago with the destruction of the temple, King Solomon's temple, and then the second one. Once we were dispersed 2,000 years around the world, God warned us, clearly in the words of the prophets, that we are not to attempt to reestablish any type of Jewish sovereignty, any type of Jewish kingdom, any type of sovereignty. We are not to return en masse in large numbers to the Holy Land, because this is a godly decreed exile to make us humbled, and that we should eventually and return to serving God on this high level that's necessary. And then God will make a metaphysical change, a miracle on the world, coming the Messiah, where all humanity will stop being atheists. There will be a metaphysical change in the world, and God then will take us back, and we will serve Him, and God will build the third temple, we believe, without any human intervention. So the concept of creating a so-called Jewish sovereignty, Zionism is a purely rebellious, anti-religious establishment, anti-Jewish establishment, certainly. This concept is, of course, not Jewish, but even the calling it a Jewish state, and that they're returning en masse to return, this is all a direct rebellion of the basics of Judaism. That would mean that even if, let's just say hypothetically, which is totally not true, if Palestine would have been a land void of people, it would have been uninhabited, we still, as Jews, because we are Jews, who are observing the Torah as God commanded us 3,000 years already, we would stand in total opposition to the establishment of a state. Even if it would be religious, not Netanyahu sitting on top of this den of thieves, of criminals, but even if it would be, I don't want to use Moses or Rabbeinu, Moses, we would still, but that is the truth, according to our Jewish teachings, we would not accept it, because the Torah cannot be changed. And the Torah tells us now that we are in exile, we are forbidden to make a Jewish sovereignty. On top of that, if it would have been done in an uninhabited land, like the Zionist mantra is that it was an empty land, a land without a people, for people without a land, even if it would have been like that, we would have stood up. But they did create their sovereignty, their state, in the land of an inhabited people. The fact of the matter is that the majority of people living in Palestine were Muslims. The second largest community were Christians, and the third, the minority, were Jews. Now, mind you, so if it would just be for the fact that they're creating this state against the will of the majority people, so we would stand in objection. You can't steal. The Torah is, again, the Ten Commandments says you have to keep the Sabbath, but they flagrantly transgress and don't observe. But of course it says we're not allowed to kill, we're not allowed to steal, we're not allowed to oppress. We have to emulate God, just as just as God is compassionate, He must be compassionate. So in every facet, every way you look at this creation that was created, the state of Israel, it's totally a rebellion against God. It's contradictory to the Torah, every shape and form you look at it. I'm just there, like they say, the cherry to the cake. Just on top of all of that, Jews are commanded to show gratitude for good that has been done to them. The Jewish people, in our 2,000 years of exile, have gone through many trials and tribulations and suffering. And because we were Jews, not when we were sinning, we were obviously everything is from God. We have to be introspective, know why it happened, these different things. But the fact is that there were very religious Jews, let's say in Spain and Portugal, and yet they created the Inquisition, where they tried to convert Jews into Christianity. If not, they were burnt. They were tortured and burnt and killed, and many Jews ran away. They were banished from the land. The history is there. These are all facts on the ground. And where did the Jews go? We were embraced by the Muslim countries. We were taken in as distinctly religious Jews, and we flourished for hundreds of years till the advent of Zionism, we flourished and remaining very religious. We flourished, put out our greatest scholars, our greatest leaders, our greatest rabbis, and we lived amongst distinctly Muslim communities, and that was not an impediment to coexistence. We were embraced. We were given a safe haven. And so this is clear that the Jewish people didn't need a human rights groups to protect us. We were there. And so we are required to show gratitude to this. We teach our children that. Maimonides, a very famous doctor, many hospitals over named. He wasn't just a doctor by us. He was one of a holy man, a very leading scholar. Was just one of his greatness that from the Torah he understood medicine, astrology, astronomy. He was a holy man, and he was a codifier of Jewish law, and we follow his teachings constantly. And he lived in Egypt. He wrote many of his writings are written in Arabic. And so basically, we flourished amongst them. So we as Jews are required, and we teach our children that. It's a basic knowledge of our children to show gratitude for the Muslim and Arab countries, and that there's nothing to do with the difference of religion. So now to go, the Zionists, in order to create their narrative that they should get support around the world, what they did is, because they are not respectful of God or the Torah, because we're talking about a nationalist movement. I carry around pictures. Let's say just a picture of the David Ben-Gurion reading the Declaration of Independence in Independence Hall. You see a picture of Herzl there, Stars of David, and here the dais. You don't see anybody with the head covered. These are all the heads of Zionism. And they're creating their historical creation, a reading of the Declaration of Independence. Now, to make a Jewish state, right? They're calling it the State of Israel, a Jewish state. In other words, they're counting on their legitimacy that God gave us the land, and this is the issue of it's a Jewish state in Palestine. So they're declaring a Jewish state. They don't even have one rabbi sitting here on the dais. It's a farce. If you would have a Muslim country, you would have imams, ayatollahs, sheikhs. You would have, something representing the Muslim religion. It's a Muslim state.
Can I ask?
Christian state.
Sorry, Rabbi. Just on that point.
Yeah, let me just finish. There's this. So therefore, I'm saying in every facet. So therefore, not showing gratitude. Just another reason why, as Jewish people, we totally oppose them, because they're claiming, for their narrative, they're vilifying the Palestinians. They're saying that the ones who are opposing them, it's because it was an empty land just with people who objected, who were living there, some anti-Semites who objected. So in every facet and shape, it's a direct rebellion against God. And because we are Jewish, because we observe the Torah, we are totally in opposition to them. And we say that their narrative is totally false. It's not a religious conflict the way they want to present the world, and that's anti-Semites against them. We say it's a purely base, selfish, flawed political entity that just started 100-odd years ago, in order to legitimize their takeover, using this name Israel, because they don't have morals of God. They left God. And that's how they're trying to solidify their occupation, and they get the backing of the evangelistic Christians, people around the world. Jewish people don't know the history, and they don't know what their religion is, and they've suffered by the Holocaust added to that. And so these fear-mongering, that is what Zionism is. Zionism is a purely evil, against God occupation. Judaism is from God, to emulate God of compassion, and we will never accept it. We hurt with the hurts of the Palestinian. Now I ask you a question. I'm sorry that I...
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Rabbi. That's been very enlightening. And I want to ask a question straight away, just to summarize for my understanding, that there is a clear difference between Zionism and the State of Israel, that it's a nationalist movement and it isn't a religious organization or a movement. Yet what's being portrayed today internationally in the media, that Zionism represents Judaism. And there is a huge confusion where a lot of people immediately, when they disagree with the Israeli government and with the actions of Israel, they feel that they are wrong because of what happened to the Jewish community during World War II and what the Holocaust that happened. They feel that if they disagree with Israel, it's the same as them agreeing with Hitler. Can you give us an understanding of that?
Yeah, you worded it very eloquently and exactly what we're saying, with God's help. Just to add to this, of course, my community, the ones that a lot of the people of our of the very religious communities are children, the remnants of the Holocaust. My grandparents were killed in Auschwitz. My father's family was Hungarian. My mother and my father and mother of blessed memory. My mother's family were from Poland, although she was born in Hungary, but her family came from Poland, and they were almost entirely wiped out. As I said, my grandparents, my father's parents were killed in Auschwitz. My father, when the Nazis came, escaped and eventually came to the United States, and my parents got married here in the United States, and I was born in the United States. But basically, our families are all a very large segment of the Jewish community around the world, the very religious, are children of peoples of the Holocaust, who suffered in the Holocaust.
Rabbi, I want to ask another question.
Was in Auschwitz himself, and so just to say now, although we suffered the Holocaust, we still believe in God. We believe that God is just. We know He makes. There's a tsunami, couldn't happen without God, an earthquake, a plague, or whatever it may be. We know that God is perfect. God is compassionate. We have to understand His ways. We do not question God. And there's a subject that we can talk about at length about the Holocaust. Maybe we'll touch on certain issues of the Holocaust with God's help. But one thing is clear, that we died because we were Jews, and we remain proud, and we teach our children, hear, O Israel, should we say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, that God is our God. When a person is born, we say it with the child. When the person, God forbid, when he's to pass from this world, we stand by his bed and we repeat with him this verse, hear, O Israel, God is our God, God is one. And we die proud, God forbid, when the time comes as Jews, we give our lives to be Jewish. We will not convert our religion at the cost of our lives, that we teach our children. So, because Zionism takes this Holocaust, the suffering of Jews, and again, they left Judaism. They are non-religious. They try to incorporate, for their selfish reasons, the facade of Judaism and the symbols of Judaism. But this is not a Jewish movement. It's a purely material movement that is void of godliness, and they use because they don't have God's morals, they have no compunctions, no problem with claiming the Jewish religion, even though they know very well that they're falsely falsifying them, falsely using the name of Judaism, and the Torah clearly, expressly tells us that we are. That Judaism is something else. We put out a book called "The Rabbis Speak Out: 130 Years of Religious Jewish Opposition to Zionism." It's not 75 years is the state, and this was written a few years ago. 100, we're talking around 100, close to 150 years that Zionism came about. At that time in Europe, and till today, the major rabbis, the major leaders of community, I'm not talking about the tens of thousands of rabbis, but the major leaders from all the different groups, all different areas, Middle East, from Europe, from wherever they were, the greatest leaders spoke up and said, this Zionism is against God. It's a rebellion against God. So they all stood up in opposition. Prior to the Holocaust, when this movement started, when the Holocaust came, and we died because of being Jews. So the Zionists went, and they continued with their movement, and they were able to gain the control and statehood in Israel. The rabbis continued to stand in opposition, the ones who are true to Judaism. But the Zionists found a beautiful opportunity to gain world sympathy and world support for their movement by saying, look, using Neturei, you were silent by the Holocaust. The world started seeing what they did, how they stood by silently when Jews were being murdered in mass. Millions of Jews were killed. They said, you stood by silently. Now you have to do something, and not, to show repentance and so forth. So they're using the Holocaust. They're using the Holocaust to tell people that they should not be equated with Hitler, as you mentioned. If you're going to stand up against them, so it's somehow showing that you are standing together with Hitler, who opposed the Jews. So they equate Zionism with Judaism, their state, and therefore, if you're opposing them, you're just a continuation of the Nazis, or somehow or another, saying it a little bit of an exaggerated form, and sometimes not even that, because sometimes they do equate people with the Nazis. But they try to say, you see, you're opposing, you were quiet there. Now Jews have to have a safe haven. Jews have to have an insurance policy. They call themselves, or whether they may call themselves, a Jewish state. Jews were so wrong, so you have to help us with making this state. And the Zionists, so in that way they use the Holocaust. We died. Our grandparents, our parents, and in some cases, in my age, I have first cousins who were killed in the Holocaust. My uncle was my teacher. He lost a wife and 5 children in the Holocaust. They died, and the Jewish blood was spilled. And why? Because they were Jewish, and we were proudly Jewish, so we never turned against God. Now they're taking our blood, they're saying that they should use this blood that was lost, that was burnt in Auschwitz. They're going to use this Jewish people as a tool to rebel against God and create a so-called Jewish sovereignty, which is forbidden for us, killing and stealing, which is forbidden for us, totally rebelling against God and using the people that had just been killed in Auschwitz.
Thank you, Rabbi. I would like to give a reflection on this. From what I understand, it's similar to what Joseph Goebbels said, where he said, tell a lie so big that no one will be able to doubt that is not the truth. And from what I'm hearing is that the Israelis have created such a lie, and it's so huge, and aligned it with all the emotional, mental, and spiritual links that humanity will agree with, that there is very little one can say to counteract the movement that is Zionism without coming across like you are absolutely inhumane.
In a certain manner, true. And I hate using these people who their names should be obliterated, Garbo and all these other murders, just because although we believe everything is from God, and that if somebody dies from a car, a drunk driver runs somebody over, the drunk driver is totally responsible. But we believe that was decreed on that person to be killed, because or else he couldn't possibly have been killed. Even if the drunk driver would have gone face on into him, a miracle would have. If it wasn't decreed on him death, he wouldn't have died. Yet, the person who drove into him is going to be punished by God. We say in our prayers constantly, every Sabbath, we say God should Yinkom Damam should revenge the blood of the ones who were spilled. So we believe that God will punish exactingly every one of the Nazis and so forth. So you mentioned, I hate to use those people as a reference, but unfortunately, a lot of it is what could be true, because we never accuse the Nazis of being inefficient, unfortunately, and we don't accuse the Zionist machine of being inefficient. Their power of political PR, the power of AIPAC, of the lobbyists in the United States, and their power of intimidating people, of silencing opposition, is phenomenal. But that said, I would add, though, that it's not it's because of that. We believe there's a God, as I said. The whole world is ruled by God. Every person's life, everything that's happening on this world is ruled by God. God, in order to test humanity, God has created something called the Shatan, the Satan. although it's God's world, but he made the Satan to test human beings. This concept that Zionism is so well accepted in the world and backed and supported is sometimes defies logic. It doesn't make sense. And yet we believe that behind everything, it's the powers of the Satan that makes it so powerful and seemingly indestructible, but it is totally not, because God is the power of the world. And in the Torah it says, why are you rebelling against me? It will not be successful. And the state of Israel will totally end. We pray only with his compassion it should end without any more bloodshed or suffering. Now, I'll just show you one example of the totally how it's illogical, and yet it was created. Take the creation of the state. The United Nations was created not long before the creation of the state of Israel. The whole concept of the United Nations was in order to gather the nations of the world together, that there shouldn't be another World War I, there should not be another World War II, there should not be such a concept of so many millions of people, and there shouldn't be any wars. That is what, in fact, right across from the United Nations, which I'm in from New York City, and we demonstrate many times. I don't have it brought to be here, but there's the Isaiah Wall. If anybody was in New York, there's a famous wall right across the United Nations where it's etched into the wall in very big letters. The words of Isaiah the prophet says, "The nations will not pick up swords against one the other, and they will not make war one nation against the other. And they will live together. The sheep and the wolf will live together in peace." That is the concept of what the United Nations was created for. Yet, almost immediately, a land, we're talking about educated people, of course, ambassadors and leaders of the world who are representing their countries, and they came together and they ratified a creation of a nation called the State of Israel. That would be Israel, that they refer to themselves as the Jewish state, and that will be in a land that the majority were Muslim, the second largest community were Christians, and the third, the Jewish people. Now, let us just leave the Jewish people on the side for a second. But how can you create a land officially called a Jewish state, the state of Israel, where they're going to be the power of, ruling over the Muslim community that's asking any commonsensical person, a child will tell you that's asking for unrest, for a rift.
On that point, Rabbi, can I just ask you, if a person then opposes Zionism, are they anti-Semitic?
Well, that's what I said at the beginning, right away, that the Zionism, because they're shrewd, we're not underestimating them for their wiliness and their slyness and this, like I said, they're very powerful. Therefore, they incorporate the religion to gain the world support. Christians, because they know the children of Israel have to live in the land of Israel. They insist. Netanyahu goes around since he's been prime minister, and he keeps on insisting to the world that it's a Jewish state. They incorporate, they convolute, and they totally blend together the two issues in order that if anybody speaks up against them, they are considered anti-Semitic.
So
they use the Holocaust to just solidify that, because that you should feel that it has to do with the Nazis and so forth. So that's clear. It's not anti-Semitism because Zionism is the opposition. It is the contradiction of Judaism. And not only that, but clearly their creation of the state. Jews, as I've said to you, have been living for hundreds and hundreds of years as Jews amongst Muslims. Since Zionism came about, we've had problems and bloodshed and more bloodshed, an endless river of blood for over 100 years now because of Zionism. And it's clear, the beautiful fabric of the Holy Land was peace and tranquility. Zionism came, and since then, there is endless blood of the Palestinian people and the Jewish people in two phases, two types of blood. Let me just bear with me a second. This blood is in order to sort of ignore this and say it's because of the hate of the Muslims, the Jews is repugnant, as I said, that they were the ones who took us in. But it's defying logic. It's insulting our common simple intelligence that you look, this came about, and since then there's an endless river of blood. They are causing the blood, so they are exacerbating anti-Semitism. They are anti-Semitism personified. The state of Israel is anti-Semitism. They've created hate and bloodshed. Now you have 1,400 people that were murdered tragically. And now the endless river of blood, every minute that we're talking, more people are dying in Gaza. How dare they say, let's talk about a side issue. Today it's Hamas, yesterday it was PLO, when they know they're obfuscating, they're diverting attention from the pure and basic cause of this endless river of blood, not only of the Palestinian, but of the Jewish people that they're supposedly created to protect. How dare they insult the intelligence of human beings and stand up against what people call human rights. I have to just one more point to this. It's so important. Not only the two communities, the Muslim and the Christian community, stood in opposition, but the Palestinian Jewish community that was living there for hundreds of years pleaded with the United Nations. This is the chief rabbi, Rabbi Wyszynski of blessed memory, in 1947, a year before the creation, when the United Nations sent a delegation to see about ratifying the state. He said, and it's in the United Nations documents, Rabbi Wyszynski said, we furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. He was the chief rabbi, nothing to do with the Israeli rabbinate, which is another part of their facade, the false facade of the Star of David. They have a rabbinate, the chief rabbi. We have Eid Charei, this God-fearing community, with hundreds of thousands of Jews that are still living there, and that came immigrants after World War II that are totally in opposition to the state of Israel. You can see here when he passed on, we took that Rabbi Wyszynski, we took another way. You see hundreds of thousands, and the United States around the world, invariably Jews around the world who are true to religion, oppose them and stand up and demonstrate. When Bibi Netanyahu came to visit the president, they said, Bibi does not represent world Jewry. The Zionist state of Israel doesn't have have no right to rule of any part of the Holy Land, etc., etc. So
there's in Israel at the moment, there are thousands of Jews that live there. And how do they look at Neturei Karta and what you're saying? How do they see you? And how do they approach you? Because they obviously believe in the state. And they must, I imagine, disagree with you.
Well, that is part of the Nakba, of this tragedy, the hate that has been developed because of Zionism, the bloodshed, the tremendous, really, that we lived together, we loved each other, we sat in the same courtyards, Jews, before the Zionism happened, we lived together. We have many of our communities are generations and generations Palestinian. We babysat each other's children. This is the history of our coexistence, like we did in Iraq and Egypt and Iran and Tunisia and Lebanon, Morocco and Palestine under the Ottoman Empire. So the Jewish community, as I said, stood up against them. We have tens and hundreds of thousands of Jews living in Palestine. And when the Zionists took over the rule, our rabbis stood up in opposition, and they were assassinated by the Haganah that was before the state. Today it's the IDF. It's called Israeli Defense Force. Of course, they have to. They're like I say, they're very astute, and so they knew to give themselves a name, Defense Force, not Army, Defense Force. But anyway, they were the Haganah, Irgun, Lehi. These groups, they went and they were murderers, and when they destroyed almost close to 500 villages, or maybe more, Palestinian villages, and they threatened the lives, and they killed Jewish rabbis who stood in their opposition to them. And but the rabbis and the Jewish community that was true to God stood in total opposition to them. Until today, we do not recognize the state. We have our communities, hundreds of thousands of Jews. We don't register by them. We don't vote. We don't go to their armies. Here you see pictures, boys and girls who turn 17, get arrested, and they have become criminals because it's a mandatory service in their IDF, but Jews we don't serve in their army. They get brutally beaten children. old men. They have no respect because simply we're standing on the streets of Jerusalem and Al-Quds and in other parts of the land of the occupied Palestine. We demonstrate. We're never militant. So the Palestinians, they call them terrorists. On us, they can't even say that, yet with impunity. And the world is silent. They trample them. They drive cars. They assassinate, arrest all the Jewish people who are standing up and demonstrating. They spray them with this chemical sprays that it's called stink water that destroys their clothes. So the poor people and they can't and so they should lose their clothes. They can't then to discourage demonstrations, but it doesn't help. They go on and they demonstrate in large numbers. And in the streets of Jerusalem here, this is in Mea Shearim, like one of the centers of the very religious community that started well before Zionism, but continues till today. You see, there's a march. This is in their streets. Here you see on top of this, standing there with the painted Palestinian flags on the building. And here it says, "Stop Zionist terrorist massacre in Gaza." This is the story that we live. You say, how do people stand? What do they say to Neturei Karta? Neturei Karta is in Aramaic. It means protectors of the city. Many of my colleagues, they're not Neturei Karta. Neturei Karta is a group. It's not even an official group. It's just the ones who are very vocal against Zionism, whether they're living in, it started in Al-Quds in Jerusalem, but it's Jews around the world who are very vocal, are called Neturei Karta, protectors of the city. But we have hundreds of thousands of Jews. And they're living, many of them in Palestine, in Al-Quds, and they demonstrate. They refuse to take any funding from the government. This medical, social medicine, so that nobody has to pay for medicine. They refuse to get covered from the medical. They pay privately from the pockets the medical expenses, birthing children, which you have large families, thank God, because we refuse to give them any legitimacy. We do not go to the elections. We don't vote by them. We like the invisibles, in our large communities, but we're not invisible. We stand up, we demonstrate, we get beaten and arrested. So you're asking how we are accepted in the society in occupied Palestine, what they call Israel. Of course, we have our communities that we're not only accepted, but we are the communities. At the same time, there are many people who there's different levels. It's from black to white. It goes in many levels. There are people who feel they can't exist. It's so hard. They're poor. That if they have a baby, you have to pay thousands of dollars. If you're not going to take the medical social service, you're not going to. So when they're ready to be released from the hospital, they say, "Here, you want to be released? Just you have to sign your name, right, and then you're free to go, or not pay 10,000 shekels, whatever it is, $3,000, $5,000, and it's on and on and on." So there are people who simply, they go along not because they celebrate the state, it's because it's the occupation, just like this Palestinian representation. And there's going further, there's some people who have representation. Well, that's the next level. There are people, then there's the good and things that joined officially at or religious Jew, they call religious, but they're not doing religion, because it's a rebellion against God, but they say they're religious and they have representation in the state because they say we have no choice. It's the de facto governing rule, just like this Palestinian representation. But they will never march and celebrate on the Independence Day parades or celebrate. And that's around the world. You'll find the religious. We have the very religious invariably is totally opposed to Zionism. But even from the ones that are less, and even some, unfortunately, who do participate in the government, in the thing, they simply say, because we have to exist. Then there's, of course, the religious Zionists. Those are the settlers and people like that incorporate. They fell into the trap the Zionists ploy, which because the Zionists have an endless well of money, and they promulgate, they constantly in modern schools like that are not very religious, that this is Judaism. So they have called religious Zionists, and those are the ones you see many times in the news and everything, because they're on the borders and they're always having the conflict more with the Palestinian people. These are religious Zionists who buy into the thing that's part of godliness. But again, that is the minority. The religious around the board, the people are true to the religion, are in total opposition, whether they're living in Palestine, whether they're living in New York or Canada or England. You go to Stamford Hills, that's the most religious community, you won't find Israeli flags. You go to Montreal, in the religious community, you come to New York, the second largest community outside of in Jerusalem, in Al-Quds. Here, it's the largest concentration of religious Jews. There's not one single flag, Israeli flag, in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. It's right across Manhattan. It's the largest concentration of religious Jews. These are Jews who give their lives for the religion. These are Jews who you can see they're Jewish, not like what they call modern Orthodox, the ones that are modern is a euphemism for a compromised Judaism. You know, they're modern. They sort of want to blend into society, and they make a lot of compromises, whether it has to do with modesty, with dress, or the acceptance of Zionism. But it's like there's a lot of issues that we're covering here. But it's a lot of basic truths, basic facts that nobody can refute. We people give our lives for our religion. We die for our religion. We live. It costs us. We have all private schooling. We don't go to public school, which is funded by the government. It's free. Yet we have large families. We don't have family planning. Our average family, maybe, thank God, has 7 children. We have to get married at a very young age.
Great.
And, it's required by God. And we pay for each child individually for their schooling. It's anybody who knows that that's a phenomenal amount of money, and we do that. Yet, when it comes to the concept of the state of Israel, all these people are opposed. Now, if it would have to something that's good for the Jewish people or something that's required, just like we give out fortunes for kosher, for education, for everything else that has to do with God, we would be supporting that. Yet again, you won't find one single Israeli flag in all of Williamsburg. Try it, go through it. It's miles and miles. And any other community that's truly religious, the more the religious the community, the more anti-Zionist they are around the world. And of course, in Palestine, in Jerusalem, we cry, we hurt, we sympathize, we suffer. We are humiliated by what is being done in our land. The people of Gaza, we don't know what to do. We have rabbis going out daily, constantly pleading with the world. We've been doing this for all the years since the creation of Zionism, and we've died for it. Many of our people have been killed and assassinated by Zionists. Maybe the first famous martyr was 1924. He was Dr. Dahan, Yisrael Dahan, and he was a diplomat from Denmark. He knew many languages. He was a friend of the king. The king, when he left Denmark, the king escorted him. He went to Palestine. He wanted to become more religious. He was a very serious person. And he felt that meant to become a Zionist. He didn't know. He didn't know the religion. He came to Palestine. The Zionists befriended him. They celebrated him because he was a brilliant man and a very famous person. And he was a poet, many other things. And then it didn't take long. He saw the Jewish community. He saw that the Jewish community that is there, the real Jewish community that was living for hundreds of years, led by a chief rabbi, Rabbi Sonnenfeld, of blessed memory. This is the 1920s. We have a picture of him meeting with the king of Transjordan in 1920s. He wrote letters and pleaded with them. He said, the Zionists were in that time starting to stick out their ugly head, and so he went and met with the king of Transjordan and wrote and had letters written in the Arabic newspapers in Arabic. It's all there to be seen. And he said, we are opposed to all of this. We do not aspire to take your land. It's against our wishes, the community. He was prior, and then he passed on, and the next was that Rabbi Dushinsky, who I showed you before, who pleaded at the United Nations. But basically, this is the voice of, the Judaism that said, no, we refuse, we cry and we hurt with the suffering of the Palestinian people. We do not want this, and we want everybody. So Dr. Dahan was his right-hand man. Dr. Dahan saw this Rabbi Sonnenfeld, met with him, and he became his close associate. And he went and tried it. He said, I'm going to plead. I'm going to go to Great Britain, because this was when it was on the British mandate. He said, I'm going to go and I'm going to inform them that they're being conned by the Zionists and they're not the voice of the Jewish community in Palestine. The Zionists told them, they warned them openly. They said, you better be silent, because if not, we're going to kill you. And they openly assassinated him in the streets of Jerusalem in 1924 in front of Shaare Tzedek Hospital. They shot him dead. And they proudly announced that this Haganah. It's in their records. It's not to be refuted. They proudly bragged about the fact that they killed him. We have pictures of all that, things like, yeah. But anyway, basically, so we are, till today, from then till today, we have died because we stand up in opposition. And the rabbi, the chief rabbi after Rabbi Dushinsky passed away, who was by 1947, the next one was Rabbi Joel Teitelman. And it's a lifelong position. He moved away from Palestine, and he remained with the title chief rabbi and lived in New York. He was called the Satmar Rabbi because he came originally from Romania and escaped the Nazis, and he was called the Satmar Rabbi from the town from where he came from. And he became the chief rabbi of Palestine. He was a brilliant man, a holy man, a man of kindness. And he moved to New York, and he urged thousands of Jews to leave. They should not be under the occupation. And he pleaded with his followers. He has hundreds of thousands of followers. He said, stand up at the cost of your lives. We should stand up and tell the world that Judaism is against Zionism. It's not Zionism. And that we as Jews around the world oppose this occupation, oppose the Zionist state of Israel. And he himself there was attempts in his life, they tried to assassinate him. And there's a lot of this we have this in the documents called the Traditional Torah Opposition to Zionism. Here you even see some of the Hebrew letters Arabic letters that were written by Rabbi Sonnenfeld, and it's in the books, a lot of it. And we have documents from the Zionists to show how hypocritical they are. We have many other of those issues.
Can I ask, how did the state of Israel become so powerful?
Well, again, remember, we say that there's a spiritual element in this world. I mean, it's run by God and everything. Everything that happens is by God. And God tests the people. And it's only the power of the Shatan, the Satan, that was able to have it even ratified and created. And since then, their powers could only be attributed to the works of Satan because it defies logic in many ways. And even today in Gaza, the Zionists we have, like I said, from the beginning till today, they do not have 10 years of peace. Every time there was a 50s, 48, 56, 67, in the 70s, and then the Intifadas, and then you see constantly see that they never have a peaceful existence. Even if they would have a peaceful existence, we would never accept them. It would be just another test for God. But they do not have a test, death on death on death. Whether it's when they had the suicide bombings, whether they had whatever it may be, death, and not only the Palestinian people, this long chain of links of bloodshed, the Nakba is made up of links and links of chains of events of death and death every day. But even the Jewish people that are dying, the ones that they kill, that they attack, and even the ones that are dying because they support the state of Israel, yet they know, it's clear for anybody with basic logic, basic sense that God granted to every human being will understand that we were living together in peace. Zionism became a political movement, and since then there's death and suffering. They know that, and yet they will insist that they will vilify somebody at the time of an eruption, a major eruption, the Intifada, or the PLO, Arafat. Today it's Hamas. We're not condoning bloodshed or violence. Clearly, it hurts us. It's tragic. The people that die, but it's tragic. The people that are dying and that are being oppressed, the Palestinian people in Gaza, every minute of the day. That's the destruction of maybe 40% of the city already or more. And yet humanity sees this, and they know, they have logic. They're leaders. They're thinkers. They're think tanks. They have to realize that this is purely because of an undertaking, a Zionist, a political movement that's totally flawed, selfish, and unacceptable, and that there's the Jewish people, these distinguished communities, rabbis, authorities, leaders of the community that clearly state that is totally removed from Judaism and antithetical, and that we oppose it. They have to see our marches. They have to see the tens of thousands that demonstrate in the streets, and how do they dare ignore the Jewish leadership and Jews who went through Holocaust, that we stand and state clearly and unambiguously that this is not Judaism. David Schleimer? Are we connected?
Yes, we are, Rabbi. I'm listening to you.
Oh, because I lost the screen. But anyway, basically, and yet the world accepts when Netanyahu opens his mouth and pours bile from his mouth and says, "Oh, we're going to punish them this way. We're going to wipe out Hamas." First, they talked about wiping off many of their generals and people. They're going to wipe off the Gaza entirely. 2.2 million people. God, woe is it to us. How dare they say such a... But then some people say that's like too much, that they feel, they put the finger in the air to see the way the wind is blowing. And people around the world say, oh, you can't say that. That's like inhumane. So, but that they're saying they're going to wipe out Hamas. Hamas is just like you have the Democratic president of the United States. And it's not the Republicans today, it's the Democratic region. And you can say, somebody's going to make a decree. Well, the Republicans did an action, so we're going to wipe out the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. Hamas is the de facto government in Gaza. They have their social offices, medical offices, everything, the fabric of that place is. So when they say they're going to wipe out Hamas, that's, in other words, they're asking for a free pass to kill tens of thousands of people. And the world says, yeah, okay, that's okay. Bomb. And they're bombing. I mean, they've killed 5,000. I've heard today, I think it's 5,800 people. Wounded must be 20,000. What it must be today already. God have mercy. The world hears this, sees this, and can accept this. And when we know clearly, it's just because of a recent movement called Zionism. Judaism is 3,000 years. We lived with Muslims. We flourished with Muslims. What is happening to the world? But apartheid also enjoyed its heyday, and in the United Nations, when they were referred to as the ambassador, His Excellency, and this and that, while they were practicing apartheid, and the ones who opposed them, Nelson Mandela was suffering in prison as a terrorist, and so the world went through such a concept that the world could be blinded to the truth. Today, nobody, any child, if somebody would step up and say, "I would like to make an apartheid state," and I have the backing of the majority of my people, then he will be ostracized. He will be labeled a terrorist or something. And yet, this was what happened.
What do you think is the plan for the next 5 to 10 to 50 years of the state of Israel? What do you think they are planning on doing? What do you think their goals are?
Oh, please, I have enough problems with what's happening in Gaza. Don't call 10, 15 years of the state of Israel, please. We believe, every day we pray to God that he should bring a speedy, and God is capable of everything, that it should be a peaceful removal, end of this dismantlement of the state in its entirety. So we don't want to look at 15 years of this occupation further. God forbid, God have mercy. But we will never change with God's help. God, that we should be true to God. We pray that because a person is never certain of himself. We're human beings of blood and meat. So, but basically, but we as I mentioned earlier, it says in the Torah, "Why are you rebelling against me? It will not be successful." The state of Israel will end. That is clear in our Jewish teaching. Now, we're not prophets. We don't know what will happen. So, whatever it is, we as a Jew do not look at what the political stances. We don't look at how strong they are in the world. The picture of what's happening. We know that we have to continually plod on, keep on going, keep on trucking, keep on going on the streets, demonstrating, teaching our children, making our schools flourish, thank God, and our communities grow larger and larger. And and that's what we have to do: is educate the world, stand up, and we plead with people like you from the Muslim community and from other communities, human rights, to call us, that we should be able to help educate and give people the power that they shouldn't have to be, when they're accused of being anti-Semitic, they can turn and say, "Look, we know what Judaism is. Of course, we're not opposed to Judaism, and we know we have people from the Jewish community, the core Jewish community in Jerusalem,
Rabbi.
in Sha'arim, around the world that are and that we should be able to inform the world and maybe get eventually, just like it was the grassroots that were able to dismantle the apartheid state in South Africa. The governments wanted to go on.
No,
it was the
Rabbi,
grassroots.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please forgive me. But just, I want to know, for the Muslim Education Show, this knowledge that you've shared with us today about the reality of who the Jews really are and who the Zionists are, and this difference that many people have their eyes veiled over and they're blind to this reality, and they may be anti-Semitic as a result of their lack of knowledge. Is there a certain amount of books that a child can read that's between the age of 10 to 15, and something maybe a little bit more advanced from 15 to 20, or that some literature that you can recommend that should be a essential reading for our viewers and for everyone, if they're in Muslim schools, for them to understand, for teachers and students? If you could list maybe 2 to 3 books that are widely available, or websites, I think that would be very useful.
We have our site, which is NKUSA, Neturei Karta, that's nkusa.org. We put out, we have different books that is on this issue. I'm trying to look for something that should be bigger, that you should see the Neturei Karta, NKUSA, that you should be able to see. And there are other organizations. Like I say, there's many around the world. Unfortunately, most of our things are written in Hebrew or Yiddish, not Ivrit, not modern Hebrew, but because they even changed the language. They hate so much the religion, they made a new book called Modern Hebrew. They quote Modern Hebrew, Ivrit, instead of the Lashon Kodesh. So most of our books are written, but we have many hundreds certainly of that, but in English, that was translated in English in our communities with everything in Hebrew or Yiddish. But we put out some books. There's other books put out by some professors. You go to our site, it lists some books. There's other organizations that writes a Nitrina, it's called, and I wish my colleague would come in. David Shleima, are you available? Keep on calling my colleague. These guys who take care of the more of the technical issues. I do speaking. These guys go out and do. So even the computer, if you notice, I have to call them in. I don't do technical issues. But basically, there are books. But you go to our site or contact us, we could give you more, some, that are written in English or in, and we have, but I'm not saying, there's much more than that is written in English to explain that. I maybe just one little issue. There's so many people around the world who are anti-Zionist. Our bases are in Mea Shearim, in Jerusalem, in other Beit Shemesh, in London, in Stamford Hills, and then in Canton, with the most religious communities. There we are based. Why? Because the intimidation tactics, the attacks of Zionism on Jews who speak up against them is horrific. They've killed our rabbis and assassinated, and we get death threats. Thank God we're alive. God should protect us. Chief Rabbi, who I said moved to New York, they made an attempt. He was almost assassinated. They attempted it on his life. So we, when they made the PLO, we had a member of our community who became a representative in the PLO of the Jewish community. His name was Rabbi Hirsch, of blessed memory. And the Zionists, he lived in Jerusalem. The Zionists poured acid in his face. He became blind in one eye. Was only able to see from one eye. This is just part of the parcel. I just went to demonstrations. We're going on demonstrations and pleading with the world. And when I came out from one of the demonstrations, the tires were slashed, the mirror was broken, the car was keyed, and we were parked on a side block even. And yet, so I'm saying, so people see this. Around the world, there's many Jews who would like to speak up against Zionism, but they're simply afraid. We have 50, the states of the United States of America, and they're afraid to speak up because they don't have these large Jewish communities. They're not so insulated. So people constantly contact us and say, "You're doing a great job."
Yeah, and it's very brave and takes a lot of courage.
Come to many countries, but they're afraid because of the fear. Just like there's attacks against them, other communities that help. I want you to know that with God's help, thank God, we traveled for many years, and we traveled the world. I've met. Just like he met with President Arafat, we're non-political. We stand. We just here to tell
this
that
is educational,
and Judaism is not a problem. You see this picture here. We meet constantly with President Abbas, although we're not for the two-state solution or anything. Here we went to Gaza. In Gaza, we met with President Ismail Haniyeh
Going
Right.
forward, Muslim children in the UK need to understand this. They need to see the Judaism that Allah talks about in the Quran is this. It's not that.
That's a brilliant idea. Right. Now it's brilliant what you're saying, thank God. But I just want to explain more. So when let's say, for instance, when President Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem, as I'm sure you well remember, they both in the Shiite world and the Sunni world made tremendous, attempts to change this and so forth, and they made a gathering. So the Grand Mufti of Al-Azhar University called us, and there was maybe close to 200 nations representing there, from the communities, and we were invited, thank God, alhamdulillah, to speak over there. And we met with so many different leaders and so forth, and they all embraced us, and they all professed and said clearly, because these are educated people, and they said we have nothing against Judaism, unabashedly, even though it was hard sometimes for their societies, for their communities, because people don't understand it, but they were clearly stating we're not against Judaism, it's only the occupation. And the leaders of Hamas said also, we have nothing against Judaism. And on a personal level, many of them had narratives, just like we, our communities, how we coexisted, how we helped each other, we did kindness for the others, constantly together living together. It is only Zionism. The same thing is when we went to Lebanon, and there was a great meeting of 170-something countries there that was represented. I'm not talking about the presidents, but the leaders of communities and the Muslim leaders and so forth, and was represented there by Hezbollah, and they came to the meeting. And you can even look on, although it's full of mistakes. Wikipedia, the first thing they write is that about my name. If you look at my name, that we met with Hezbollah, but we met with them more than once when we went to Lebanon, and they brought me to their. They made a reception for us. It was open, everything was open, and they kept. And the second leader of Hezbollah came to this great meeting, and he held my hand high. And he said, they're not against Judaism. They have nothing against Judaism. They just don't want the occupation. Again, we're not condoning violence. That's clear. That's not our issue. But we're talking about at the core, the reason of this Nakba, of this violence and everything is nothing to do with the difference of religion. And everybody wants to coexist. And nobody wants bloodshed. Nobody wants death. But we don't want an occupation. As one of my great rabbis of blessed memory used to say, so it's love used to say, he said, yes, everybody wants peace. The state of Israel wants a peaceful occupation, but we want peace. So basically, they would be standing out and demonstrating. They ask us to come to their communities and demonstrate because they're fearful. And just like you have the attack, the people of being labeled as anti-Semitic, they call self-hating Jews. They write against us. They write falsehoods. They write constantly libels of things that are total, false about us. For instance, I went to Iran. And there was a conference, a very famous conference about the Holocaust when President Ahmadinejad was there, president, and he made and he said, I just like they're attacking the Muslims. He wants to show that the Holocaust that they're using the Holocaust wrongly in order to oppress the Palestinian people. He did not say the Holocaust didn't happen. And we had writings from the very famous people. I'm trying to remember in the Times of London. Steele, his name is Jonathan Steele, and very Juan in University of Michigan. Wrote also one of the very distinguished professors. They studied his writings, and they said he never said that the Holocaust didn't happen. He said, I just want them, they're using the Holocaust as a tool. I'm going to make a conference. He was very in your face, So we went to that conference. There were many people who were supposed to go, distinguished scholars from Jewish people, from the Jewish communities, and they were so intimidated they had to cancel out. That said, at the conference, there were many people, professors from many lands, and as a whole, the vast majority were there to state that the millions of Jews were murdered, as I did, and now my writing, my words, my speeches are there to see. And we said that the Holocaust happened, but to use the Holocaust as a tool to oppress the Palestinian people is against, as I started this conversation with, is against what we as Jews. It's using the blood of the Jews to in order to use it to rebel against God. And I said nobody is refuting that. And I said it clearly. In fact, right at the opening session, the foreign minister of Iran got up and said these, similar to what I'm saying, that they're not here to refute the Holocaust. On the contrary, they're just here to state that it should not be used to oppress the Palestinians. There were thousands of reporters there. The Associated Press went and reported while I was there that Rabbi Weiss said the Holocaust was exaggerated. I went when I came home. This was a few weeks later, 2 weeks later, and this was exactly, by the way, at September 11th. When I came home, the day of September 11th, when the tragic happening in New York of the World Trade Center. And I came home and the damage was done. Hundreds of newspapers and more had printed that Rabbi Weiss said the Holocaust was exaggerated. I showed nobody, we had Reuters, you had BBC, everybody heard my comments. It's written, I was the one who spoke right after the foreign minister. I said in my comments that we are here to show that although millions of people were killed, I must probably even said that my grandparents were killed in Auschwitz, but they should not be used to oppress the Palestinians. Yet they had the audacity, Associated Press, to write. They made a retraction, but who heard the retraction? Till today, when I want to speak anywhere, the association or the university invites me to speak, gets letters from the Zionists. Do not call this rabbi. He denied the Holocaust. It's beyond belief what they do. And that's how they attack our community. And I have to send in the letter. In fact, I had a tour in England, Scotland, and Wales that they made an effort that they should not be allowed into England. And they wrote in one of the Zionist newspapers, the largest Zionist newspaper, it's called the Tribune, and they slandered me. And so we sent to the press union, and they had to write a big apology in their newspapers. And we have it, it's all recorded, we have it, the documents. They had to write a big apology because they slandered me. And they were forced to. They wanted to get away with it, and because we proved that they had called me even. And they knew prior that what the writing is false, and yet they wrote it. And this is what they do constantly. They slander anybody who comes to our demonstrations. They go around in your face with videos. They take videos of people who come to our thousands of people come to our demonstrations. And then they look where he works. Oh, this person works for this large corporation. So they go to the heads of the corporation and they say, you want business dealings around the world? You're going to have problems because you have this guy who's standing up against Israel. And people lose their jobs after every demonstration. So people are fearful of being outspoken against the state. You would have tens of thousands of people at least, most probably hundreds of thousands. And you think when you see a Jew on the street, he's in support of the state? No, it's not. It's very probably that he's not. That's not that to say there are people who support the state. Some because they fall prey to the Zionist propaganda, and some because they are Zionists, whatever it may be. So I'm saying it's very important for the Muslim world to know that when you see a Jew, it does not mean that he's a Zionist. You see a Jew, and even if he is, God forbid, it's very possible it's because the power of the propaganda, a lot of people are not trying to condone what these people are supporting it, but a lot of these people, they give money for charities, they help people, they'll even help privately, they even help Muslim people and so forth. And I can tell you it's a fact that you see in the hospitals the names of people giving money for charities around the world. When it comes to Palestine, they're blinded of some of these people. A lot aren't, but there are some who are blinded, and it's because of the relentless propaganda, fear-mongering that the Zionists tell the Jews. They give them a narrative that the Palestinians and many Muslim people hate the Jews and they want to see them dead, and they're connected with Hitler, the Mufti of Jerusalem, and on and on and on and on. This repulsive, repugnant words of the Zionists. But people have to know. So I apologize for the Muslim communities and certainly for the people of Palestine. We cry, we hurt what's being done in our name and what's happened to, unfortunately, what Zionism has corrupted, unfortunately, from the Jewish world again. But we are still many strong who are in total opposition, and we cry, as I say, we pray to God, and many of us even go out and in Palestine, and we get arrested. Just this last week, mind you, they have broken into the homes of our people who demonstrated, broke into the homes, arrested my colleagues in Jerusalem, and this happens daily. They love to break into the house in the middle of the night. It's psychological, so people can't rest fitfully at night, and they ransacked our synagogues. This would be done in any part of the world. Netanyahu would come traipsing around and declaring anti-Semitism. He would demand restitution that should be sent directly to the coffers of the state of Israel. If somebody would be attacked just once in any country, it would be uproar in the world. It would be brought to the attention of the United Nations. But yet, with impunity, they brutally beat, attack Jewish people over there simply because we are objecting to their godless and nakba what they're doing to the people of Palestine.
Rabbi Weiss, it's been too good. It's been too good. This has been, the only word that keeps coming back to me is educational, because I've learnt so much, and I've learnt, to be honest, how to go forward in my direction, in my life, when it comes to speaking up against Israel. Now I feel I can do it with a clean heart, because there was a contradiction in me that, am I being anti-Semitic? Am I holding reservations? And by talking to you, all of that has cleared, because now I have this love for the Jewish community, and I think you've been responsible for giving me that.
Thank you. I'm humbled. I'm humbled. Thank God. Yeah.
So whatever intention you came with, it's worked.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Thank you so much. I know that we're already out of time, but it has been so educational, and I've learned so much. And I think more than anything else, for Muslim viewers to really understand that the Jewish religion and the people of the real Judaism are on the same side as the Muslims when it comes to understanding that the state of Israel and the Zionist movement does not represent Judaism, and being pro-Judaism and having love for the people of Judaism does not mean that you can't stand up against the state of Israel and Zionism. And I thank you so much for giving us this knowledge, and I hope that we can see you again. If you're in London, would like you to come to the studios, and if there is more opportunities for us to do things over Zoom, I think it would be great for us to learn from you again. Thank you so much, Rabbi Weiss.
Yeah, we would love to come to any Arab or Muslim country. Call us. Spread our word first. We plead with everybody, spread the word as much, and especially to the people of occupied Palestine and in the refugee camps where they're suffering so much. And spread the word and call us. We would love to come to be together live and educate and embrace. And with God's help, we should have sooner nowadays a free Palestine. So as a Jewish people, we can express our gratitude for the people of Palestine and the Holy Land and the world for being so kind to Jews through our history. Give back that freedom. God should help, inshallah, sooner nowadays. And ultimately, God should reveal His glory with all humanity will recognize and serve God with peace and tranquility and joy.
Rabbi, we love you, Rabbi. And because of you, our love for our Jewish brothers and sisters increases, and may God help you and strengthen you and give you more courage in the work you're doing, and help us be of assistance with you.
Shukran. Assalamu alaikum.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.